Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. So yesterday there was an interesting exchange between Teofimo Lopez and Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford apparently was a little bit bored yesterday, although there were a number of entertaining college football games on. Terence Crawford felt the need to get at Teofimo Lopez, and it made for an interesting exchange. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, he talked a little bit about Teofimo's contract situation, called him all kinds of names, and of course Teofimo responded with, if you're not going to lace him up, then you need to STFU. I'm paraphrasing all of these things here because I'm not going to go back and read all these tweets. Now, Terence Crawford made a number of interesting comments. He talked about don't pocket watch him. He's broke. He's begging for the Canelo fight. He's heard all these things before. Apparently, Terence Crawford is a little bit sensitive to these comments because, I bring him up. But the one thing that I did think was interesting and what I wanted to talk about here on this particular episode of the Angry Man Podcast was this comment. If you ever thought Teo had a better resume than me, your mama eats dog ish, and you need to stay far away from boxing because you don't know ish about boxing. That first part, I think there was maybe some challenges there. And he also said, I respect all fighters, but Teofimo Lopez only had 3 fighters worth even talking about, and that's Lomachenko and Ortiz beat him. Taylor lost his fight before Teo and definitely should have moved up to 147, but we all know why he killed himself to make 140 pounds. So he is directly attacking the resume of Teofimo Lopez. So let's talk about a couple of these things, right? You respect all fighters. You're talking about Josh Taylor and the fact that Josh Taylor should have moved up to 147 pounds and that he was compromised in a fight with Teofimo Lopez. Yet we can also make the same argument that Errol Spence should have moved up to 154 pounds when he fought you, and he was compromised when he fought you. And when you hear those arguments, you have an issue with it. Yet you're making these comments. So that's number one, right? I just needed to throw that out there because that's a clear contradiction of something that you said in the past, and we have to address that. Now, let's talk about resumes, right? What does that mean, right? Does Terence have a better resume? Does Teofimo have a better resume? What does having a better resume mean? Now, number one, it's subjective. But for me personally, and I think a lot of fans get this confused, resume is not necessarily a measurement of your accomplishments. And I think that's where a lot of fans, particularly Terence Crawford fans, get it confused. Your resume is not tantamount to your accomplishments. Those are two different things, at least in my mind. I'm going to use Bill Russell as an example to help you all understand this. Bill Russell has 11 NBA championships, if I'm not mistaken, and he is not regarded as the best player ever by virtually no one, right? No one regards him as the best player in NBA history, although he has 11 NBA championships. Those are accomplishments, but those accomplishments came during an era where you didn't have as many African Americans in the league, and you only had, 8 teams or something like that, so the competition wasn't as great. So although you have all these accomplishments, it doesn't mean that you have a better resume, right? Resume is about the level of competition that you faced. That's the point that I'm making here. So then how do you measure two fighters that there's at least a 10-year age gap? I think Teofimo Lopez is like 27 years old and Terence Crawford is almost 37. Actually, no, he is 37 years old now. So how do you measure these two? They have a 10-year gap. I would imagine that Terence Crawford would have fought more top-level fighters in his 10-plus year advantage than Teofimo Lopez would have. I mean, that just makes sense. So the way that we can possibly try to measure this is to see who Terence Crawford fought at the age of 27 versus Teofimo Lopez, who is 27 today. When you think about Terence Crawford's resume at 27 years old, Terence Crawford was 27 back in 2014. Let me repeat that, 2014. So before you run through your mind about all of the fighters that Terence Crawford has fought, and before you make up this narrative that the reason why he hadn't fought this top level of competition was because everybody had ducked him, in 2014, Terence Crawford was at 135 pounds. So the narrative of everybody ducking him at 147 does not apply when you compare Teofimo Lopez at 27 to Terence Crawford at 27. Want to make that clear because I know some of you are going to run to the comments section and start making these ridiculous claims. At 27 years old, the best competition that Terence Crawford had been in the ring with was Ricky Burns and Gamboa. And Gamboa had just moved up to 135 pounds. As a matter of fact, he only had one fight at 135 when he fought Terence Crawford. He came into the ring with a 3 to 4 inch height disadvantage and a almost 10 inch, because I believe his reach is 65 inches. Terence Crawford reaches 74. So 9-inch reach advantage for Terence Crawford. Those were the best two opponents Terence Crawford had faced at 27 years old. Okay, now let's look at Teofimo Lopez. The best two opponents that he's faced, Josh Taylor and Lomachenko, are the best two fighters that he's faced. Right? If I compare those two fighters, compromised or not, to Gamboa, who would have also been compromised because he was moving up 2 weight classes to fight a guy that was much bigger, and Ricky Burns, clearly Teofimo has the better resume if you're comparing them at 27 years old. 27. I think that that's a fair comparison. Now, if you're comparing Terence Crawford today, which I don't think people are, I think when they're comparing Terence Crawford to Teofimo Lopez and they're making the comment that Teofimo has a better resume, I think instinctively, I think subconsciously, they are comparing them at similar ages, right? Because if you compare Terence Crawford today, Terence has beaten Errol Spence, he's beaten Sean Porter, in addition to, some of those other fighters. So yes, I would give Terence Crawford the edge at 37 years old, but he should have the edge because he has a 10-year advantage in terms of career length. That makes sense. So it was an interesting comment from Terence Crawford. And, sometimes when these guys go on social media, it becomes clear what they're sensitive about. And clearly to me, Terence Crawford is somewhat sensitive about the comments about his resume and who he's fought. I think he knows that there's some truth to that, honestly. You can make arguments about even the victories over Sean Porter and Errol Spence. You can make arguments in regards to what their physical capabilities were going into the ring and or their mental state. So you can make those arguments, and I think he knows that. And I think he's somewhat sensitive to that. And I think that's the reason why some of these things come up, because I didn't see anywhere where, and maybe I missed it because I don't follow everybody's tweet. I don't run and try to read every tweet and subtweet and response from Terence Crawford or his fans or the fans that don't like him. I don't attempt to do that. So maybe I missed it and he was addressing that. But clearly he brought it up more than one time. And it's interesting because I think when you go on social media, I think you sometimes tell on yourself in regards to what you're most sensitive about. Right? He also mentioned the whole situation about chasing the Canelo fight. Brother, you are. Everybody knows that you're chasing the Canelo fight. Everybody knows you're chasing a payday. Most fighters are chasing a Canelo Alvarez payday. It's okay. There's no reason to sit up here and deny that. When you deny things like that are readily apparent, it paints you as being disingenuous. So that's not something you should do. Okay. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments section in regards to the resumes of both Teofimo and Terence Crawford. Also the exchange yesterday. Don't forget to hate, like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Angry Man Podcast, M Sports Media, and I am out.